Hello and welcome back to the RetroBreak Podcast. This is episode 52 and I've got a bunch of different things I want to talk about today, starting off with how I'm planning to fix my YouTube channel from 2025 onwards. So still a few months out, but I wanted to get my thoughts out of my head and into audio format and into written format. So I'm going to start with that. I'm also going to talk about some of my game collecting goals as I'm going away to another gaming market this weekend in Milton Keynes, which I'm very much looking forward to, and some early plans for what I'm going to look out for when I go to Japan next as well, which is potentially happening early next year. So there's a lot to talk about. I also am going to tell you some of the games that I've been playing. I've been playing some great games recently. Going to talk about a few projects that I've got in the works, some videos, some gaming related projects, some development projects, and also some of my favourite content that I've been experiencing over the past few weeks since the last one of these episodes, as well as a collaboration as well, in which I was a part of another podcast, which I'm a big fan of, called Manga Attack, but we'll get to that later on as well. So let's start off with the first topic here. And although it sounds like something that's not that good, I'm actually going to sort of spin it around into a positive kind of way. So although I did have a very bad month on YouTube in August, and I did write a really big blog post about that, if you want to take a look at some of the tribulations that I've been going through over the past few months, and things do seem to just be getting worse and worse in terms of statistics. But on the other hand, I also feel like when I'm looking at YouTube Studio, despite the lack of views, despite the lack of subscribers, it's actually the best that I've felt about the content and about how I feel about creating the content and watching the content back. It's the best potentially ever that I've actually felt about how the content's actually coming across. It's just a case of no one actually wanting to watch it, which is a little bit sad, but I do feel like I'm still improving every single time, which is what matters. And when I made that blog post, I had so many really nice comments across YouTube in the community section, and actually on the post itself over on my website. A load of people have logged into WordPress and left me some words of encouragement on there as well. But basically what it boils down to is that I want to try and come up with a better format next year for the channel, in which it won't really be any extra stress for me to make the videos, but the way I'm structuring it, I'm kind of feeling like I'm pretty much guaranteed that it's going to go better than what this year's gone. So I did do a lot of deep dives into the analytics again. I know I probably look at them too much, and I know some of you have been telling me just not to worry about them because it's probably just playing on my mind and I'm probably better off not even thinking about them, but I have been thinking about them quite a lot and I have come up with some solutions. So the first thing is something that I shared on the website, on the actual blog post, and that is the fact, if I just find the right tab on here, that I've started writing out all of the content that I've created over the past 2 years now. So I actually started looking back at this from January 2023 up until today. At the time of recording, it's the first week in September of 2024, and I went through every single video over those 2 years, and I looked at the analytics, I looked at the graph in the background for all of those videos individually, and took a look at which ones were still continuing to bring in new viewers and new subscribers, and which ones had either plateaued or which ones had never taken off to begin with. And based on that, I either ranked them as growing or dead, and the results are quite surprising. So last year, it was pretty much 50-50 between growing and dead videos, but this year, it is about 3/4 of the videos that I've made have just not gone anywhere, which is quite frustrating considering the amount of time and effort that I've put into creating them. And the ones that are growing kind of aren't ones that I enjoyed making. So the ones that are growing from this year are things like the Game Boy Micro style handhelds video, the Powkiddy X whatever Game Boy Advance inspired emulator handheld, the RG35XX handheld, and the Game Boy Homebrew compilation, which are all videos that I don't want to keep making more of because I just don't enjoy making them. So the ones that do well, there are ones that I enjoy making, are the hidden gems and the top games videos, but I know that very soon I'm actually going to run out of games that I can actually use to make these lists, and I don't want to get into a situation kind of like how Metal Jesus Rocks is, where he's kind of exhausted all his possibilities for hidden gems and top games lists and compilations and stuff like that. So a lot of you have given me some really good suggestions in that space. So some people said, how about instead of just doing top games for a particular system, why don't you focus on specific genres instead? So I might do that. I might do a video like top retro racing games. That's one that I've been thinking about recently. Or top platformers for a specific console. Or maybe the best Konami games of the 16-bit era or something like that. So there's ways that I can do that, which I'm kind of going to put to the side for now because I do actually still have a few consoles left that I can do proper top games lists for. So one of my plans for next year, starting in January, is each month of the year I'm going to go through and just complete that list of consoles that I've got top games videos left to do. So the Wii U, the Switch, the PlayStation 1, the PlayStation 4, original Xbox, PC Engine and TurboGrafx, and a few others. So that's pretty much going to fill out the rest of the year in terms of top games videos. And then, I think I've mentioned this on the podcast, but I actually created, if I can find it, this content table here, and it's basically, well, what I'm calling it is the everything you need to know checklist. And I know I've mentioned this before, but I've actually started going through this in more detail and actually putting down the month next year and the year after that I'm actually going to focus on making those videos. So we have top games covered up until the end of next year. In fact, you can check on me again in a year and a bit's time, but according to this, at the end of next year I will have finished all of them, and the final one that I'm making in December 2025 is going to be the PC Engine top games video. And after that I'm going to move over to the hidden gems for the different systems. I've already done some. I've done the DS and the SNES, GameCube and Wii, but there's a bunch of other ones that I haven't done hidden gems videos for, so I'm doing that. There is a problem though, and it's going to be quite expensive because I only want to do games that I actually own physically, and I would rather get them complete in box. But what I have figured out is that thanks to the money that these videos bring in, I can actually pay for the majority of the games that I want in those videos from the ad revenue from the videos themselves. So I think I've set myself up really well to be able to get the games that I want to show off in these videos. So fingers crossed it all goes according to plan, and I've got all the way up until December 2026 planned out here, where I'll finish off all of the hidden gems videos and actually start moving into some more history videos. So starting at the end of 25 going into 26, I'm going to go back to focusing on the history and the development of all the different consoles and work through that. And throughout that as well, I've got the memories subs milestone videos as well. So the last one I did was for my 40,000 subscriber special, where I did the Game Boy memories episode for 40,000. So Game Boy Color is going to be 50, Game Boy Advance is going to be 60, DS is going to be 70, 3DS is going to be 80, and so on and so on. So I've got all that planned out up until about 300,000 subscribers, and then I don't know what I'm going to do after that in terms of milestone celebration videos. We will think of something when the time comes, which it will at some point in the future. I am optimistic. I will make it work somehow. I just have to figure this out, and I know I'm probably putting too much thought and effort into it, but if it's what it takes to make the channel better, then I'm going to stick it out. So in terms of fixing my YouTube channel, which was part one, that is where we're at with that. And I'm going to take a short break, which you won't even notice. I'm just going to go and take a quick drink, and I'll be back in just a second. All right, I'm back. Not that it seemed like I went away. But anyway, moving on to the next part of the episode, I'm going to talk about a few of my game collecting goals, because I am going to a gaming market next week. I'm going there next week, and I'll probably be going to one next year as well, so technically that's still true. I might also as well just include my Japan plans in this part as well, because some of the games that I'm looking for are actually Japanese games, which if I don't find at the market, I'm putting them on my list to track down in Akihabara whenever I go there next. So let's start here with a list of Tetris games that I'm after, because I want to do a video on all of the different 8 and 16-bit Nintendo Tetris titles. So for the NES, the Famicom, the SNES, and the Super Famicom. And I actually found out there's a lot more than I thought there was, and I'm only about halfway through collecting all of them in order to do the video. So I need the Tengen version of the NES Tetris, which is obviously the third-party unlicensed version, which apparently is actually a really good version of the game, so I'm definitely going to try and get that. It's not actually as expensive as I thought it would be, so I'm very much planning to pick that up in the near future. There's also Tetris Flash on the Famicom, which I only found out recently is the same as the European Tetris 2 for the NES. And I always thought they were two completely different games, but actually they're exactly the same game. Tetris 2 is Tetris Flash, which is really confusing because in Japan there's another game called Tetris 2 plus Bombliss, which is completely different to the English Tetris 2. So Tetris 2 plus Bombliss is regular Tetris which is like a fixed version of the Famicom Tetris, which is completely broken, plus a brand new game mode called Bombliss, which is kind of like a take on Tetris where you can blow up parts of the level using bombs by connecting them in certain ways. It's kind of hard to explain, but it's a really cool version of the game. And it turns out there's actually 3 different versions of Bombliss for the Super Famicom. So there's Super Tetris 2 plus Bombliss, which is what I've got, and there's 2 others that I didn't even know existed. There's another one called Super Tetris 2 plus Bombliss Gaiten Han, which is like an add-on version with some new extra levels and different cover art. And then there's a 3rd version, which doesn't even include the Tetris name at all, so I don't think a lot of people know about this one, that's just called Super Bombliss, which I think is just the Bombliss part of Tetris 2, without the actual Tetris game, but maybe a more polished version of the Bombliss game, so definitely looking for that. And there's also Tetris and Dr. Mario for the SNES, which I have cart only, but I would like to try and get the box for, and Tetris 2, the UK version for the SNES, which is Tetris Flash. In Japan, I presume, also for the SNES, or maybe they called that one Tetris 2, I have no idea. Anyway, I've got a lot to still collect that I didn't realise I still needed to find, so that is very, very interesting, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting video when I do get round to getting all those games and recording all the gameplay, because I'm sure even with the regular Tetris modes there's lots of subtle differences and changes between them, whether it's the way the blocks rotate, or whether the physics are different, or the timings are different, or the way you level up is different. There's so many little nuances that people probably don't even recognise about those games, so it'll be very interesting to dive into the details about that. And in terms of other games, I'll cover some of the Game Boy Color ones that I want to find, because I am planning to still do the Game Boy Color Top Games videos this year, and I've actually decided to split it into 2 different parts. So we're doing Game Boy and Game Boy Color compatible games, and I'm actually going to do 2 top 20 lists as well. So I have 20 Game Boy/Game Boy Color games listed out here, and there's only 2 more that I need to get in order to finish my collection to do that video, and they are Blaster Master Enemy Below, which I've got written here that I want to get for around 100, and I did see it on eBay for around that price in the past, but now I can only see it for about 170, which is a bit frustrating, so I'm hoping I can find it for cheaper than that and I don't have to cave in and buy it for that price. And the other one is Dragon Warrior 1 and 2, which I heard is a really good port of the first 2 NES and Famicom games to the Game Boy Color, and I'm a big fan of all the other Dragon Quest games on there, so I'm definitely looking forward to finding that one. And let's take a look at the other one here, which is Game Boy Color exclusive games, and I've got 4 more that I need to find on this list. We have another Dragon Warrior game, Dragon Warrior 3, and I've got written here that to get that one complete in box is a bit more expensive. That one's going to be around 250. And unfortunately, 2 of the other games here are also looking to be around that price as well. So we have Lufia, The Legend Returns, which is Lufia 3, and I'm a massive fan of Lufia 2, so hopefully the 3rd one is just as good. I know it has randomly generated dungeons, which might be a little bit different for the series, so very much curious about how that one plays. I do have an unofficial sort of reproduction cart, but I would love to get the actual official game. And the other expensive one is Harvest Moon 3, which I might end up swapping out for a different game because I've already got Harvest Moon 2 on my other list anyway, and that one's also looking to be about 250 quid. And the final game for the Game Boy Color exclusives one that I want to try and get is Crystallis, which is another port of a NES game, but the NES game never actually came out in the UK, so I never had a chance to play that. And I'm not really sure whether the Game Boy Color one actually officially came out in the UK or not, but I know it's region free anyway, so it doesn't really matter where it comes from. So I'm expecting to be able to find that one for around 150, and hopefully I can get all of those games by the end of the year and do those 2 top Game Boy Color games videos, and maybe that will bring in a bit more interest back into the channel, for the Christmas period as well, which would be fantastic and would certainly improve my mood a little bit as well. So there's some of my collecting goals for the near future, and some of the things that I want to try and find in Japan as well. I've also been writing out some import games lists as well, for also trying to track down games in Japan when I go there next, and I might do some specific videos on trying to find those games in particular, rather than just doing shop tours like I did last time, so maybe make it a little bit different. Anyway, that is it for the topics part of the podcast. Let's move on now to some of the games that I've been playing recently. So now for some of the games that I've been playing, and I probably need to get a little jingle or something to separate these topics. I think that would be kind of nice. I might look into that in the future. Anyway, some of the games that I've been playing. First up, we have Peglin for the Switch. And basically what this game is, cross-Peggle with a RPG with like monsters and dungeons and things, and a roguelike game as well. So there's loads of different power-ups that you can add to the ball as you're bouncing it around on the field. There's bombs on the field that explode and damage all the enemies at the top of the screen. And in some ways, I absolutely loved it. I have completed the game now. I've got all the way to the end of the actual story area, and I've beaten the final boss, if you can even really call it a boss. They're all basically the same levels, except there's different enemies at the top of the screen. Anyway, I enjoyed it for what it was, but I do feel like it was missing a lot of polish. It felt very flat for some reason, like there was animations missing. There wasn't really any feedback to a lot of what was happening on the screen, and especially once you've played it through a few times, you kind of want to play it in fast forward, which is an option. So I just ended up playing the entire game at like 3 times speed, and it was just a strange experience overall. Like, on one hand, I really love the concept, but I think the execution leaves quite a bit to be desired. But overall, as like that style of game, I think they did a great job. I'm just really conflicted with it. I really wanted to love it a lot more than I did, but I did also at the same time still get kind of addicted to it and played it enough to get all the way to the end of the adventure, which does take quite a while, and there's still a bunch of more things to unlock, but I don't really know whether I'm going to go back to it now that I've actually finished the main story or not. I don't know. It's a weird one. Like, I wish I could say it was like an 8 or a 9, but I honestly would have to give it like a 6 or a 7, I think. But check it out if you want something different. It's not too expensive, and you will be engrossed for a while anyway. So give it like half a recommendation, I think. The next game I recommend quite a lot higher, and I'm very much looking forward to playing it again in the week. I've been away for the weekend, so I haven't had a chance to play it for a while. But when it came out last week, I absolutely loved it, and I played it last weekend quite a lot. That is Visions of Mana. Again, it does feel kind of unpolished at times. It does feel like they could have spent a bit more time, especially with the way the characters sort of pop into existence when the camera shifts in the cutscenes, which I think is very odd. But the story's really nicely told. I love the character designs. The gameplay is really fun. It does feel quite a bit slower than Trials of Mana, which I really loved a few years back. But I'm still only about 6 hours in, so potentially it could change. I've heard it's like a 30-ish hour game, so I'm about a third of the way through, and I'm loving what I've played so far, and I'm definitely going to go back and complete it. So very high recommendation for Visions of Mana. The next one is the Castlevania Collection, and I only played it for a little bit. I actually played it on stream the day it came out, so I played through some of Dawn of Sorrow, which is one of my all-time favourite Castlevania games, and playing it again to capture some footage and to play it on stream. It just reminded me of why I love that style of game so much, and they absolutely nailed it. And it also reminded me that I really missed that era of Konami. They had so many interesting games. I love the atmosphere of all of their games from the early 2000s. They're just so engrossing. There's just something about them that they absolutely nailed it, that they have just lost touch with over the years. So hopefully, once they run out of collections and remakes to do, they'll come back and make a proper 2D Castlevania game again. Bloodstained didn't really fill that void for me, so I'm still waiting for a proper return to form with a proper 2D Castlevania, Metroidvania style adventure. So fingers crossed one day that will happen. And that's it for games that I've actually been playing, but there is one that I'm expecting to play very soon. Well, in fact, it's in my calendar and it will happen. I've actually blocked out every single day that week to play it on stream as well, and that is Panzer Dragoon Saga, which is a game I've actually been very excited to play for a long, long time, and I'm very much looking forward to it. So I really hope you'll all join me. Let me just see what days I've actually got written down here. So starting on the 16th of September, up until the 24th, that's what I've got blocked out. It may take less, it may take more, but every single evening from the 16th onwards until I complete the game, I'm going to be playing a few hours of Panzer Dragoon Saga, and I cannot wait. I'm very, very excited for that, and I hope it lives up to the very, very lofty expectations I've set for that game, so we will see. And then at the end of the month, I'm planning to do a review and share my thoughts about the game as well. So I hope you're looking forward to that towards the end of the month. And that is it for games that I wanted to talk about. Now let's move on to a few of the projects that I'm working on at the moment. And there's not that much to talk about at the minute in terms of the projects front. I'm still planning to finish Super Donuts at some point this year and get it re-released. And I've also started writing down some ideas for a new game that I want to make. But before that, I want to go back and review what I did for the GMTK Game Jam. And if you want to hear all about that, check out the last episode of this podcast, in which I made a game in 72 hours, I think it was, for the Game Maker's Toolkit Game Jam. And I learned how to use Godot, the game engine, as well. So I'm going to go back, open that project up, see if I can familiarize myself. Pretend I didn't just mess that up. It is like 10 o'clock at night right now. I'm going to go back and have a look at everything in that project and see whether I can remember all of the things that I learnt and sort of make something new again from scratch. And I've got some really fun ideas that I won't share just yet. I want to see whether I can get a prototype up and running, and maybe I'll share some of that on a video in the future, so look forward to that. I do really want to try and get back into game design, which I'm also going to be talking about in an actual video on my main channel at some point soon as well. I'm going to talk about sort of my history with game design and, you know, what I went through at college and uni, which I've never really shared properly before. So there are some interesting stories that I've got that I'd like to try and turn into a video at some point. And I already shared my project plans for the channel. So next year, look forward to hopefully a much more healthy channel. And hopefully I'm going to be a bit more upbeat when I'm writing the end of year and end of month like blog posts on my website. And if you haven't seen them, check out retrobreak.co.uk, and each month I go back and sort of review the past month and see where I can improve, where I can change things, and what I've enjoyed, what I haven't enjoyed, and everything like that. So that's basically it for the projects now. Hopefully I'll have some more to share in the next podcast. And the final part here is some content that I've enjoyed over the past 2 weeks. So we'll start off with the GMT Game Jam. So the last time I was talking about that, it was still ongoing, I think, or it only just finished, but they hadn't announced the winners. Well, the winners were announced. I watched the episode as soon as it came out on Patreon, and wow, some of the entries this year were just amazing. There's so many super talented people that watch Game Maker's Toolkit. It really is a sight to behold. They were so unique with the designs and the concepts that they'd come up with. And it's just really great to watch all these entries and kind of come up with ideas for yourself about how you would improve their games and, you know, take some inspiration from them too. So that was really cool to see. Definitely check that out on the GMTK channel, and also check out his live streaming channel if you want to see him playing through some of the entries as well. I did watch all of those as he was streaming them throughout the week after the jam had finished. I've also been watching a bunch of visual novel reviews because I've been getting back into visual novels recently. In fact, that should have been part of the games I've been playing, but I didn't write it down here. I'm almost finished with Summer Pockets, and I'm hoping to finish reading that by the end of September, so I can actually say that I played it throughout the summer, because I started it when we went on our summer holiday a few months ago, and I'm right near the end now, and I've been really enjoying that. But I've also been wondering, what visual novel do I want to play after that? And I've got a list. Let me pull up the list. I've got a lot of lists, but let me pull up this one in particular if I can find it. And maybe you guys and girls listening to this can actually help me out and figure out which one I want to play next. So I'm just going to list them out here, and you can tell me in the comments which one you think I should play next. So I have Ginka, I have Island, Atri, White Album 1, the remake, Canon, the re-release, and Aukana. And that's it for now. There are a few more that I thought about, but I feel like for now that's plenty to put on the list. I'm kind of leaning towards the remake of White Album 1 because I've been very curious about that series for a long time, and I hope that White Album 2 will get a re-release at some point, because apparently that one is the best visual novel ever made. So we will see. Apparently White Album's got some very annoying moments in it though, so maybe I won't go with that. I'm also kind of tempted to go with Island as well, because it seems to have a similar sort of vibe as Summer Pockets, and I really enjoyed that. So maybe it's a toss-up between those two, but please let me know in whatever comments, wherever you're listening to this, which ones you think I should give a read after that. And the last thing I wanted to mention was the Mangatak podcast, which is something that I've been talking about for the past few weeks or months now, actually, because it took a long time to get around to recording it because of various scheduling conflicts. But I finally went on there and I was able to talk about Insomniacs After School, which is one of my favourite manga at the minute. And I had a great time doing it, but unfortunately he ran into a lot of technical issues with the recording. So if you do go and listen to it, be warned that it wasn't picking up this microphone, which was actually very disappointing. It messed up the recording, and I actually recorded it from the MacBook microphone, which is actually on the other side of the desk, so it does sound a little bit echoey. and you also didn't get the 2 channels of audio, so it didn't sound too great either. But the conversation is still good, and I'm sure you can still get the vibe of the manga, and you can kind of pick out why we enjoyed it so much and why you should go and check it out for yourself. And if you do, definitely check out Volume 2 as well, because I wanted to talk a lot more about that one than Volume 1. But we were restricted to just talking about one volume, so definitely check it out. If you like manga, I know it's a little bit different to the regular retro gaming stuff that I like to talk about, but I did have a lot of fun on there, and hopefully I can go back on in the future and use the proper microphone and talk about some of my other favourite manga series as well. Anyway, that's it for this episode 52. Really hope you're enjoying these podcast episodes, and as always, I will see you all again here in another 2 weeks' time. Thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.